The music faded and the lights dimmed, but she stayed frozen at the edge of the dance floor, clutching the satin of her dress. Laughter drifted through the hall, some of it cruel, some of it worse. Pity disguised as kindness. No one asked her to dance. No one even looked her in the eye. Her scars caught the soft glow of the chandeliers, tracing her skin like lightning bolts, raw and honest in a room full of polished lies. She tried to smile, but her lips trembled. She turned to leave, the weight of rejection heavy on her shoulders. A shadow stepped into her path. Tall, proud, dressed in traditional regalia that shimmered with beads and feathers, he said nothing. The air between them thickened, brittle and hot. Without a word, he took her hand, burned, trembling, and pressed it to his lips. The hall went silent. She gasped, the world tilting on its axis. Every sneer, every whispered insult, every moment of self-doubt cracked and shattered like glass around her. His eyes, dark as midnight, fierce as fire, held hers, unflinching. For the first time that night, she wasn't a scar. She was seen. Sage Monroe had learned early that the world divided people into two kinds, those who stared and those who looked away. There was no middle ground, no safe space between curiosity and shame. At 18, she was already a master of reading eyes before they could even speak. The fire that had left its mark on her body had stolen more than skin. It had stolen the easy grace she once moved with, the unthinking confidence she once wore like perfume. In its place, there was caution, sharp and constant. A second skin. Tonight was supposed to be different. A celebration of unity, an annual gathering where local tribes and townspeople shared food, stories, and dances under the starlit Arizona sky. Banners fluttered from the wooden beams of the community hall. The smell of fry bread and roasted corn hung sweet in the air. Drums thudded low, ancient rhythms shaking the ground beneath their feet. It was supposed to be a place where past wounds healed and pride was honored. But here, too, old wounds festered. The whispers had started as soon as she walked in, tucked into the spaces between the music. Pretty girls in turquoise jewelry and ribbon skirts shifted away from her without thinking. Mothers steered curious children by their shoulders, hurrying them along. Boys her own age, dressed sharp and beyond the lookout ties and freshly pressed shirts, found reasons to look anywhere but at her. Sage straightened her spine, refusing to shrink. She wouldn't give them the satisfaction. Still, each smile she forced cracked a little more inside her. She found refuge near the wall, under the watchful gaze of a mural depicting a warrior standing atop a red mesa, arms stretched to the stars. Bold, proud, undefeated. A reminder of what her grandmother always said. You carry fire in your blood, not on your skin. She didn't feel it tonight. She felt tired, heavy. Her world, in that moment, narrowed to survival. Breathe. Don't cry. Pretend you don't see the way they see you. That was her environment. Not the wide-open desert she loved, not the stars singing overhead, but a battlefield stitched from glances and silence. And then, like the sudden hush before a storm, he appeared. He moved differently from the others, not with the awkwardness of a boy, but with the grounded strength of someone who knew where he came from. His regalia caught the light as he crossed the floor, long, dark hair braided with ribbons, a necklace of carved bone resting against a tunic embroidered with ancient symbols. His moccasins whispered against the wood. Sage didn't know his name yet. She only knew that he walked as if the ancestors themselves steadied his steps. When he took her hand and kissed it, the hall stopped breathing. In that instant, something shifted inside her. Not everything. Not the scars, not the loneliness, but something small and vital. A crack of light through a closed door. The boy, no, the warrior, straightened and met the stares of the crowd without flinching. He wasn't ashamed of her touch. He wasn't afraid of her skin. And for the first time in a long while, Sage wasn't just surviving the moment. She was standing in it, belonging to it. What she didn't know yet was that this moment would be the beginning, not the end, of her story. A story where survival would give way to strength. Where old scars would become the maps leading her home. The drumming resumed, louder now, rattling the floorboards. Conversation started up again in low murmurs, but the mood had shifted, split wide open by the kiss on her hand. Sage barely had time to breathe before a heavy hand clamped down on her shoulder. "That's enough," barked Mr. Jensen, the event coordinator, his town council badge gleaming under the hall lights. His face was tight with fake smiles and real anger. "We don't want trouble tonight." The warrior, the boy who hadn't even spoken yet, stepped between them. Calmly, deliberately. His presence alone made Mr. Jensen falter for half a second. "She's not the problem," the boy said, his voice low and steady. Mr. Jensen's eyes hardened. "Listen, son, I don't know who you think you are, but this ain't the place for protests." Protests? Sage's stomach twisted. People were staring openly now, the dance floor forgotten. A few town officials whispered to each other, lips thin and tight. On the far side of the hall, Sage caught the furious glare of Mrs. Parsons, the mayor's wife, and the way she hissed something into her husband's ear. The boy didn't flinch. He tilted his chin slightly, pride woven into the very fabric of his stance. "My name is Kai Yazzie," he said clearly. "My great-grandfather fought to keep these lands free. I don't need your permission to honor someone with respect." Somewhere near the mural, an elder woman nodded silently. A few young men from the nearby tables exchanged glances, subtle but sharp. Lines were being drawn, invisible but deep. Sage realized it wasn't just her scars that had made her an outsider tonight. It was what she represented, a break in the carefully curated image of harmony. They didn't want reminders of pain or survival. They wanted neat stories, victories without blood, smiles without history. Mr. Jensen stiffened. "You're making a scene." "Good," Kai said simply. Two security volunteers started weaving through the crowd toward them. Fear clawed at Sage's throat. She had just begun to feel seen, and now it was all crumbling around her. Worse, she was dragging someone else into it. "I should go," she whispered, trying to pull away. Kai tightened his grip, not enough to hurt, but enough to anchor her. "No," he said quietly. "They don't get to erase you." The words hit her harder than any insult ever had. The security guards closed in. One reached for Kai's shoulder. Sage tensed, expecting a fight. Instead, Kai raised their joined hands high, almost like a salute. His voice rang out over the hall, clear and proud. "Tonight, we dance for all our warriors," he declared. "Even the ones the world tried to burn." For a heartbeat, silence swallowed the room. Then, from somewhere near the back, a single drumbeat answered. Then another, and another. The elders were rising to their feet. One by one, they began to sing, a deep, thrumming chant that filled the hall like thunder. The crowd that had once closed around Sage now opened wide, not to push her out, but to pull her in. And just like that, everything she thought she knew about belonging was shattered. For better or worse, there was no going back. Outside the hall, the night air wrapped around Sage like a balm. The stars sprawled out endlessly overhead, clear and sharp. She stood close to Kai, the sounds of singing and drums still echoing behind them. But they weren't alone. A girl leaned against the hand-painted mural wall, arms crossed over her chest, one eyebrow arched. Her black boots tapped against the stone rhythmically. She wore a leather jacket, a crimson scarf tucked under it, and a look of amused challenge on her face. "You made a mess in there," the girl said, her voice like gravel over velvet. Kai grinned without apology. "Good." He turned to Sage. "Sage, this is Arya Blackfeather. She's complicated." "I'm resourceful," Arya corrected, pushing off the wall. She studied Sage with sharp, assessing eyes, not cruelly, but not kindly either. "You got more guts than I thought. Most people would have run." Sage opened her mouth, then closed it. She wasn't used to being seen and challenged in the same breath. It was unsettling and a little thrilling. Arya flicked her gaze toward Kai. "You really think she's ready?" Kai shrugged. "Ready or not, she's part of it now." "Part of what?" Sage asked, tension creeping into her voice. Before either could answer, a low whistle cut through the air. A lanky boy with a battered cowboy hat jogged toward them, a camera slung around his neck. "Man, you guys lit a fire in there," he said, breathless. "Council's already having a meltdown. Mrs. Parsons is on the phone with someone. Real official-like." He turned to Sage, sticking out his hand. I'm Colt James, resident troublemaker and unofficial historian. Sage shook his hand, caught between confusion and curiosity. Historian? She repeated. Yeah, Colt said, tapping his camera. People like to forget things. I like to remind him. Arya rolled her eyes. He thinks he's some kind of revolutionary. I am some kind of revolutionary, Colt said, grinning. And you're standing in the middle of the next chapter. Kai's expression darkened slightly. We have to move fast. They're not going to just let this go. Sage's stomach twisted again. Let what go? Arya's smile was razor sharp. You'll find out soon enough. But here's the short version. Things around here aren't as shiny and peaceful as they pretend to be. People like you. She gestured at Sage's scarred hand. You're reminders they can't whitewash away. And people like us. Colt added, slinging his arm loosely around Arya's shoulders. We don't let them forget. The distant sound of tires crunching gravel reached them. Flashlights flickered near the parking lot. Kai's voice dropped low. Urgent. If you're with us, you need to decide now. Because after tonight, you're not invisible anymore. Sage looked from Kai to Arya to Colt, their faces alive with defiance and something more dangerous, hope. Her whole life, she had tried to disappear. Maybe it was time to do the opposite. She nodded once. Steady. I'm in. They didn't make it far. Kai led them behind the hall toward the dirt trails weaving into the desert, a shortcut to his uncle's ranch where they could lay low. Sage's heart pounded with each step, every shadow looking like it might lunge. Still, she kept moving. She had chosen this. Halfway to the edge of town, just as the last notes of singing faded behind them, red and blue lights burst through the darkness. 3 sheriff cruisers blocked the trail. Doors slammed. Uniformed men fanned out, hands hovering near holstered weapons. At the front stood Sheriff Dalton himself, an aging man with a gut like a beer barrel and a face weathered from years of pretending he served everyone equally. His voice cracked the night air. Step away from the girl. Sage froze. The girl? She thought they'd come for Kai, or Arya, or Colt. But it was her they were after. Kai stepped in front of her, arms spread wide. She's done nothing wrong. Dalton sneered. She's trespassing, stirring up trouble, and according to some very concerned citizens. He glanced meaningfully toward the hall. She assaulted a minor. Sage's blood went cold. Assault? She hadn't touched anyone. She hadn't even spoken. It's a lie, Colt muttered, lifting his camera. I've got footage. Dalton pointed at him without looking. That camera moves, son, and you're in cuffs. The deputies advanced, slow and steady. Colt lowered his camera, fury flashing in his eyes. Arya reached for something hidden under her jacket, but Kai shot her a warning glance. Sage's mind spun. This wasn't about rules or justice. It was about control. About erasing the disruption she'd caused just by standing up straight. She hadn't realized how fast they'd move, or how much power they'd use to silence her. We can fight this, Arya hissed under her breath. We can make it public. Colt can leak the footage. We can rally the elders. Kai's voice cut her off, low and steady. No. Everyone turned toward him, confused. His shoulders were rigid with tension, his jaw tight. If they arrest her, he said slowly, she disappears into their system. They'll bury her in paperwork, hearings, fake charges. It'll take months, maybe years, to clear her name. And until then, he didn't have to finish. Everyone knew what happened to people who got caught in a system built to break them. Sage realized the plan, to run, to regroup, to fight from the outside, was dead. She had a choice. Go quietly and hope they could save her later, or fight now and risk making everything worse. Dalton's hand dropped to his cuffs, smug and certain. Sage straightened her spine. No, she said clearly, stepping out from behind Kai. You want to arrest me? Fine. But know this. She turned to Kai, to Arya, to Colt, burning the moment into her memory. You're not just fighting for me anymore, she said. You're fighting with me. The deputies moved in. Cold metal snapped around her wrists. As they led her to the cruiser, Sage didn't feel fear. She felt fire. And she knew, with bone-deep certainty, that the war had just begun. The cell was small, cold, and smelled faintly of bleach. Sage sat on the bench, her wrists sore from the cuffs, the adrenaline long gone. Hours had blurred into each other. Questions she wasn't allowed to answer, papers she wasn't allowed to see. Sheriff Dalton had made it clear, she was no longer just a girl with scars. She was a problem. At first, fear gnawed at her, sharp and panicked. What if Kai and the others abandoned her? What if no one came? But as the minutes stretched and the fluorescent lights buzzed overhead, something inside her shifted. Not fear, not even anger. Resolve. No one had ever fought for her before. No one had ever been willing to get dirty alongside her. That alone was worth the risk. Late into the night, the world began to change. It started with shouting outside, low at first, then louder, angrier. Boots stomped. Voices rose. Through the small, dirty window, Sage saw flashes of color. Handmade signs, feathers woven into braids, the gleam of camera lenses. The parking lot was packed. People from the hall, elders from the reservation, even some of the town kids who had ignored her hours earlier. They weren't a mob, they were a wall. Solid, unmoving, demanding. Her heart twisted painfully in her chest. Not from fear, from hope. The door creaked open. Dalton stormed in, face red, a paper shaking in his hand. "Congratulations," he growled. "You're released. On technicalities." Sage said nothing as the cuffs were removed. She walked past him, chin high, her scarred hand brushing the doorway like a promise. Outside, the air smelled like rain and dust and life. Cheers erupted when she stepped into the lot. Flashes from cameras nearly blinded her. Colt waved from the top of a pickup truck, holding a cardboard sign that read, "Our scars are sacred." Kai pushed through the crowd to her side, a rare smile lighting his face. "You held the line," he said. Arya stood nearby too, arms crossed, but a flicker of pride in her dark eyes. "I didn't know if anyone would come," Sage admitted, voice low. "You didn't have to," Arya said. "That's the point. The world wasn't perfect." She could see the fear etched in the faces of some townspeople lingering at the edges of the crowd. She could hear the sheriff's radio crackling with calls for backup. Tension buzzed under the celebration. But for the first time, Sage wasn't a symbol of pity or a reminder of tragedy. She was a spark, and sparks, if protected and fed, could burn down mountains. She caught Kai's gaze and saw the question there, the same one humming in her own blood. What's next? The answer was simple. She wouldn't run. She wouldn't hide. She would fight, not just for herself, for everyone who had ever been told their scars made them less. The world was changing, and so was she. The celebration was short-lived. By morning, Sage, Kai, Arya, and Colt gathered at the old trading post on the reservation, an unofficial meeting place now buzzing with rumors and half-truths. Sage sat on the worn steps, sipping lukewarm coffee, her mind still reeling from the night before. She thought they'd won something. She thought visibility was safety, but the world was bigger and crueler than she had dared to imagine. Arya burst through the front doors, a folded newspaper in her hand. She tossed it onto Sage's lap. "Front page," Arya said, voice flat. Sage unfolded it. There, under a screaming headline, "Local event marred by outburst and violence," was her picture. Blurry but unmistakable. Her scarred hand raised, Kai beside her. But it wasn't just the image. It was what came below it, a story crafted with surgical cruelty. It painted Sage as a radical outsider, someone not truly part of the community. Someone with a troubled history, a history none of them knew, but were willing to invent. "They're not just trying to erase you," Colt said, sitting down beside her. "They're rewriting you." Sage's hands shook slightly, but it wasn't fear, it was rage. "This is bad," Kai said grimly, flipping to the second page. "They've already scheduled a town council emergency meeting. Tonight. And guess who submitted the formal complaint against you?" Arya added. Sage braced herself. Kai slid a paper across the table. At the bottom, in sharp, legal handwriting, was a name. Lila Monroe. Her mother. Sage's breath left her in one brutal rush. "No," she whispered. "She's gone. She left years ago. She doesn't. She's back," Arya said, softer now. "And she's siding with them." The ground felt like it tilted under Sage. Her mother. The woman who had abandoned her after the fire. The woman who hadn't even called, even once, after Sage woke up in a hospital room with half her body burned and no home to return to. And now, out of nowhere, she was here, helping the town crucify her? Why? Sage's voice cracked. No one answered. There was no good answer. Kai crouched in front of her, his steady presence cutting through the chaos. This changes things. We can't just fight for acceptance anymore. We have to fight for truth. Colt's eyes gleamed with something fierce. We dig. We find out why she came back. What they're hiding. Sage swallowed hard. Her whole life, she thought survival meant staying quiet, staying invisible. Now, survival meant standing up against the person she had once loved most. She folded the newspaper carefully, as if taming something wild. Fine, she said, her voice steel. If they want a villain. She rose, meeting their eyes one by one. I'll show them what a real one looks like. Outside, storm clouds gathered over the desert. And for the first time, Sage didn't feel afraid of the coming storm. She was the storm. The storm broke at sunset. Sheets of rain battered the desert, turning dust to mud and washing away the last traces of the celebration. Inside the old trading post, the mood was just as heavy. Sage sat in the corner, knees pulled to her chest, staring at the folded newspaper like it might catch fire if she looked at it hard enough. Everything inside her felt cracked open, raw and shaking. She couldn't stop hearing her mother's name, Lila Monroe, echoing inside her skull. Across the room, Colt paced like a caged animal, his camera swinging from his neck. This doesn't make sense, he muttered. Why would she come back now? Why sign a complaint? They must be blackmailing her. Or maybe she's part of something bigger. Maybe she always was. Arya slammed her boot down on the table, rattling the mugs. Her expression was darker than Sage had ever seen. Or maybe she just doesn't give a damn about Sage, Arya snapped. Not everyone's got a tragic reason. Some people are just cowards. The words hit harder than Arya probably meant them to. Sage flinched, but said nothing. Part of her agreed. Part of her still wanted to believe there had to be some twisted reason, some excuse that could make this betrayal hurt less. Kai leaned against the wall, arms folded, a muscle ticking in his jaw. He hadn't said much since the revelation. He didn't pace. He didn't shout. He just watched. Everyone. Everything. Like he was trying to solve a puzzle only he could see. Finally, he spoke. This isn't just about Sage anymore, he said quietly. This is about control. About fear. He pushed off the wall and crossed to the window, rain streaming down the cracked glass. His voice dropped even lower. They're afraid because they know something. Something they buried with Sage's past. Colt stopped pacing. Arya lowered her foot from the table. Sage lifted her head. You think it's connected to the fire? Sage asked, her voice barely a whisper. Kai turned back to her. His eyes weren't angry. They weren't pitying. They were sharp, determined. I think your scars were never the end of the story, he said. They were the beginning. Sage wanted to believe him. She wanted to believe her pain had meaning, that it wasn't just random cruelty. But hope was dangerous, and she wasn't sure she could survive another collapse. I can't. She started, voice cracking. I can't be the reason you all get hurt. Colt gave a short, humorless laugh. Too late for that. Arya smirked grimly. Welcome to the war. Kai crouched in front of her, his hand light on her knee. You don't have to be ready, he said. You just have to be willing. Sage closed her eyes. For one long moment, she let the grief crush her, let the betrayal tear her in two. And then, slowly, she breathed through it. When she opened her eyes, she wasn't whole. She was something sharper, stronger. Then let's burn it all down, she whispered. Outside, lightning tore the sky in half. Inside, for broken kids prepared to make history. By morning, the rain had stopped, but the world hadn't gone back to normal. Inside the trading post, the mood had changed. No more pacing, no more shouting. Only quiet focus. They weren't running anymore. They were planning. Sage spread a worn map of the town across the table. Her fingers, still trembling slightly, traced the familiar landmarks. The school, the council hall, the burned shell of the old community center where the fire had started years ago. They want the world to believe I'm unstable, she said, voice steady. That my scars are proof I'm dangerous. Colt nodded, clicking open his laptop. And they're rewriting your history to erase their guilt. So we don't fight them in the shadows anymore, Sage said. She looked up at her friends, her allies. We drag everything into the light. Arya leaned back in her chair, chewing on the cap of a pen. You're talking exposure. Records, files, old investigations, if they even exist. They exist, Kai said, tapping a spot on the map. The county archive. It's not digital. They never scan the oldest files. Too many ugly secrets. And you know this how? Colt asked, eyebrows raised. Kai gave a ghost of a smile. Because my grandfather helped bury a few of them. Silence fell across the table. Sage swallowed hard. Then we dig them up. This was no longer about survival. No longer about convincing people she belonged. This was about truth. Exposing it. Wielding it. Even if it hurt. Especially if it hurt. Arya drummed her fingers against the wood. Getting into the archive's gonna be tricky. Guarded during business hours. Cameras. Locked at night. We'll need a distraction, Colt said. Something big enough to pull every deputy and security guard for miles. I can handle that, Arya said, smirking dangerously. Give me a lighter and a bag of fireworks. Sage smiled for the first time in what felt like days. It wasn't the smile of someone hoping to be accepted. It was the smile of someone about to change everything. We're not just stealing files, she said. We're telling our story. Our way. Colt lifted his camera. Document everything. If they come after us again, the whole world will see. Kai nodded slowly. Truth is our weapon. If we're careful, it'll be enough. Sage took a deep breath, feeling the weight of the choice settle in her bones. No one was coming to save them. No one was going to hand them justice. They had to take it. Tonight, Sage said, folding the map with crisp precision. We go to war. Outside, the sun broke through the storm clouds at last, painting the desert gold and red. Inside, they sharpened their hope into a blade. And for the first time, Sage felt not like a victim or an outcast, but like a leader. Not because she was perfect, because she refused to stay silent. Because sometimes survival wasn't enough. Sometimes you had to burn the lies down to the ground. The plan went off like clockwork. While Arya set off a dazzling chaos of fireworks at the far end of town, Sage, Kai, and Colt slipped through the darkened halls of the county archive. Colt's camera captured every cracked file, every rusted cabinet marked with sealed records no one had touched in years. And there it was, a thick folder labeled, Monroe Fire Investigation. Sage's heart hammered as she opened it, hands trembling. Pages spilled out, witness statements, fire marshal notes, insurance documents. And something else. A letter, dated weeks before the fire. A complaint filed by her mother, Lila Monroe, claiming Sage was unstable, a danger to herself, likely to cause an accident. Sage stared, her stomach lurching. Before the fire, before the scars, before she ever lost her home, her mother had already tried to erase her. Kai leaned over her shoulder, reading quickly. His hand tightened into a fist. It was premeditated, he whispered. She didn't abandon you after the fire. She set you up before it. Sage wanted to scream, to rip the paper apart, to erase the truth. But it was too late. The world she thought she'd rebuild was gone. It had never existed. And then came the real betrayal. Footsteps echoed through the hall. Too many. Kai cursed under his breath. They're here. They knew. Colt swung the camera onto his shoulder. Someone tipped them off. Before Sage could process it, the answer clicked into place. She turned toward Colt, heart sinking. He didn't meet her eyes. You? Sage said, voice cracking. Colt swallowed hard. I didn't have a choice. You always have a choice. Arya's voice rang out from behind, breathless and furious. They offered me a deal, Colt said, voice low. Drop the footage, give them the time and place, and they'll leave my family alone. They've got my little brother on probation, Sage. One mistake, and he's gone. I couldn't risk it. Pain splintered through Sage like glass under pressure. They had trusted him. He was the one who said truth is our weapon. But even truth could be bought. Kai stepped between Sage and Colt, his body tense. We have to go? Now. But Sage stood frozen, the weight of the betrayal crushing her chest. She forced herself to move, to clutch the stolen folder against her heart as they sprinted for the exit. Sirens wailed in the distance. Flashlights danced wildly through the rain-slicked streets. By the time they reached the edge of town, only 3 of them remained. Sage didn't look back. Colt's betrayal wasn't just a wound. It was a reminder. This wasn't a clean fight. It never had been. Winning would cost everything, even people she loved. It was a reminder. This wasn't a clean fight. It never had been. Winning would cost everything, even people she loved. As they slipped into the desert shadows, Sage tightened her grip on the evidence, on the truth she now carried like a burning brand. She would mourn later. Right now, there was only the fight, only the fire, and she would carry it alone if she had to. The desert stretched out before them, an endless sea of nothing. Sage's mind buzzed with the relentless drumbeat of time, each second closer to the moment she couldn't outrun. They'd been moving nonstop since Colt's betrayal. Arya, Kai, and Sage barely slept, barely ate. The stolen files were burned, and the truth was ready. But so was the town. And the sheriff. They were coming. Tonight, everything would change. I don't like this, Arya muttered as they huddled in the abandoned shack on the outskirts of town, the walls trembling with the force of an incoming storm. We don't have enough time. We don't have enough people. Sage barely heard her. Her mind was fixed on one thing, the clock ticking relentlessly. Every breath felt heavier than the last. Kai stood by the door, eyes scanning the horizon. They've moved up the town council meeting. It's tonight, same time as the rally. They'll use it as a final push. Sage nodded, feeling the weight of it settle deep in her bones. It wasn't just the fire anymore. It wasn't just her scars. It was the entire town, the corrupt web of lies and power that had suffocated everyone, including her. And they were closing in. Where's Colt? Sage finally asked, her voice colder than she intended. Arya's face tightened. He won't be coming back. Not after what he did. Sage flinched, the raw wound of betrayal still bleeding deep. But the truth was, she couldn't afford to waste time on grief. Not now. Not when they were out of options. We move fast, she said, her voice now hard, cutting through the thick silence in the room. We hit the council meeting first. Expose everything. Every file, every lie. Get the crowd on our side. Then we storm the station. If we can make it there, we'll have enough leverage to make them listen. But we only have one shot. Arya grabbed her pack, checking the gear they'd gathered. One shot, huh? I like the sound of that. Kai's gaze softened slightly, though his tone remained serious. You sure you're ready for this? Sage met his eyes, her heart thundering in her chest. I'm as ready as I'll ever be. It was a lie, but she couldn't let herself falter now. The plan was reckless, desperate, but it had to work. There was no other way. They left the shack just as the first drops of rain began to fall, a steady rhythm that mirrored the growing tension in Sage's chest. As they approached the heart of town, the sounds of the rally grew louder. Chanting, voices, the hum of anticipation. But it wasn't enough. It never would be. Stay sharp, Sage said, gripping the folder of evidence that felt like a weight too heavy to bear. We expose them, or we don't walk away from this. Kai placed a hand on her shoulder, his touch grounding her for a moment. We walk away together, or not at all. But Sage couldn't bring herself to answer. The town was waiting. And in that moment, she realized the truth. They weren't just fighting for justice anymore. They were fighting to survive. The town square was a cacophony of chaos and tension. The rally was in full swing, a crowd gathering in front of the council hall, chanting, demanding answers. Sage stood at the outskirts, heart pounding, barely able to catch her breath. It felt as though the entire world was holding its breath with her. Kai, Arya, and Sage huddled in the shadows just behind the rallying crowd. Colt's betrayal still stung, but there was no time for reflection. No time for regret. They had to move. Now. Ready? Sage whispered, her voice tight, strained. Arya nodded, the flare of determination in her eyes as she double-checked the explosives in her pack. It's now or never, Sage. Sage didn't respond. Instead, she stared at the council hall across the street. The old stone building, looming above them, felt like a monument to all the lies they'd been fed. The lies about the fire, about her mother, about everything. She could still feel the weight of the folder in her hands, the files they'd risked everything to steal. This was her moment. It had to be, but nothing felt certain anymore. The crowd's chanting grew louder, and Sage could hear the murmur of voices inside the hall, the council members preparing for their meeting. They were all so close. They would expose everything. They would take the lies and burn them to the ground. "We move on 3, Kai said, his voice low, focused. His usual calmness was edged with urgency. 1, 2, 3. Sage's heart skipped a beat as they emerged from the shadows, slipping through the crowd, unnoticed for now. They were almost at the council hall's back entrance when a voice, gravelly, cold, sliced through the air. "You're not going anywhere." Sage spun around, her pulse spiking. Standing there, blocking their path, was Sheriff Monroe. Her mother. Lila Monroe's expression was stone cold, her stance one of absolute authority. Behind her, a group of deputies, guns drawn, formed a wall. Sage's stomach twisted. She hadn't expected this. Not here, not now. Her mother's face was a mask of betrayal, just like it had been in the files. Only this time, there was no confusion, no excuses. "You didn't think I wouldn't see this coming, did you?" Lila said, her voice low, filled with ice. "You thought you could tear this town apart, expose everything, and I wouldn't stop you?" Sage's hand tightened around the folder, her breath coming in short bursts. "You set me up. You." Her mother stepped forward, eyes narrowing. "I did what I had to do to protect this town, to protect your future, whether you liked it or not. I never wanted this for you, Sage, but you couldn't keep living in the past. You're a danger, a risk." Sage's heart burned with rage. "You ruined me," she spat. "You ruined everything. Because of your fear, your lies. You can't protect me by making me disappear." Lila's eyes flickered, just for a second, a hint of something softer, something broken. But it was gone before Sage could grasp it. "You're making a mistake," Lila said, her voice tightening, becoming steely once again. "This town isn't yours to burn." Before Sage could react, Arya spoke up, her voice cutting through the tension. "We're not burning anything, Sheriff. We're just telling the truth." With that, Arya dropped her pack, pulling out the explosives she'd gathered, her hands steady as she set them up with quick precision. "Truth isn't a weapon, it's a force," Arya said. "And truth can't be controlled." Sage felt the weight of her mother's gaze. It was more than just betrayal now, it was a reckoning. The town, the sheriff, her own blood, they were all complicit in a system of lies that had crippled them, that had suffocated her for years. "You're right," Sage said, her voice steady, strong. "I'm not just here to burn it down. I'm here to build something new." The explosives were set. The crowd was still chanting, unaware of the storm brewing around them. They didn't know that the truth, everything that had been buried for so long, was about to come out into the open. Sage turned to face the hall. The door was just ahead. Her heart thundered in her chest, but this time it wasn't fear. The explosion rocked the night sky, a deafening crack that sent shards of sound echoing through the streets. Dust and debris rained down, scattering across the square as the council hall's back entrance collapsed under the force. Sage didn't flinch. She barely noticed the firelight dancing on her face. She didn't need to look back to know the truth was out now, exposed for all to see. The rally had stopped. The crowd, stunned, watched as the firelight illuminated everything. The lies, the cover-ups, the wreckage of years of silence. The truth was now undeniable. Behind her, Arya, Kai, and even Colt, though his eyes were filled with shame, moved swiftly, securing the perimeter, ushering people away from the smoke, keeping them safe from the chaos they'd just created. The fight wasn't over. Not yet. They still had to make sure the evidence would be seen, that the world would know what had been done to them. But for now, it was enough. Sage walked toward the ruins of the council hall, where her mother stood, unmoving in the smoky haze. Lila Monroe, the woman who had tried to break her, to erase her, was no longer untouchable. The sheriff's authority crumbled with each footstep Sage took, each inch closer to the one person who had torn her life apart. Lila didn't speak. Her face, usually an impassive mask, was something different now, tired, worn, and haunted. Sage could see the weight of years of secrets and lies pressing down on her, heavier than any badge could carry. "Why?" Sage asked, her voice surprisingly calm. "Why did you do it?" Lila's lips parted, but the words never came. There were no excuses, no apologies, Only the silence of someone who had convinced herself that what she'd done was necessary. For the first time, Sage saw the brokenness in her mother's eyes, but it didn't matter. It wasn't forgiveness Sage was after anymore. It was freedom. "You can't control me anymore," Sage said softly. "You never could." With one last look, Sage turned away from her mother, stepping back into the shadow of the town, her heart lighter than it had ever been. The crowd was already dispersing, whispers and murmurings spreading through the streets, as the truth seeped into the air like smoke. Sage didn't care about their judgment anymore. It wasn't theirs to give. As the town began to settle into the aftermath, Sage found herself standing at the edge of the desert again. The vast expanse of earth stretched out before her. She could feel the weight of what was to come, the rebuilding, the healing, the work ahead. But it didn't scare her, because for the first time, the future felt like her own. Kai stood beside her, his presence solid and reassuring. "We did it." Sage nodded, staring out at the horizon, where the sun was just beginning to rise, lighting up the sky in streaks of pink and gold. "Yeah, we did." But even as the dawn broke, Sage knew the journey wasn't over. The battle had been won, but the scars, her scars, would never completely fade. She wasn't just fighting for herself anymore. She was fighting for everyone who had ever been silenced, forgotten, or broken. And that fight, she realized, would never truly end. The sun rose higher, casting light on the broken remnants of the past and the promise of what would come next. And in the quiet, Sage whispered to herself, "I'm not afraid anymore."